This report opens a very interesting door for the New York Islanders as an insider has linked them to a veteran left-handed defenseman. We're going to discuss on this episode whether or not this player is a fit for the New York Islanders and what they're trying to be next season. And more importantly, do the Islanders need another left-handed defenseman in general? It's very notable when it comes to the left side of the Islanders defense. When we consider veterans, they only have two players who have played more than 40 games in the NHL. That might sound crazy because it is crazy, especially when you consider most teams tend to have more left-handed defensemen than right-handed. Now, you do have to note there that Matthew Schaefer is a left-handed defenseman, and this might be one of the big reasons why the Islanders don't, one, have more veterans on the left side, and more importantly, why they might not need more veterans. But we're going to break it down on this episode of Islanders Digest. Really quickly, if you have not yet subscribed to the channel, be sure to do that. Now let's talk about this player, and this is Matt Grzelcyk, and this is a really interesting defenseman. When it comes to what type of player he is, if you're not familiar with Matt Grzelcyk, he played a long time with the Boston Bruins before playing last season with the Pittsburgh Penguins, where he really had an odd season in terms of his standards. We're going to talk about that in just a bit. But if you want a player comparison when it comes to what type of player he is, this is really like a Mike Riley guy. He's not going to be a guy who plays big minutes on your team, but if he needs to, because there were times the Islanders needed Mike Riley, especially in his first season, to play 20 minutes a game, he can do that for you, and he moves the puck really quickly. I will note, this is a player that fits really well into a system for Patrick Waugh, and according to The Athletic, Pierre LeBrun has said the Islanders are one of the teams who are moderating the situation when it comes to Grzelcyk. Now, he is currently signed on a PTO with the Blackhawks, but that does not mean he has to sign with the Blackhawks. If a team likes him, if the Islanders decide, hey, we need a left-handed defenseman, they can certainly make an offer and sign him for what would likely be league minimum. And what is compelling about this is, realistically, if you had the choice between playing on the top six for the New York Islanders or the Chicago Blackhawks, then obviously you're picking the Islanders. Where this gets a little challenging is, what would the Islanders' role for Grzelcyk be, and whether or not it makes sense to sign him? Because again, a player like Grzelcyk is going to want to play. When you sign a veteran defenseman in the NHL, Grzelcyk played 82 games last season for the Penguins, and he played pretty well. He's not going to want to sit on the bench. So if you sign a player like this, that means one of your young players is sitting. And in my opinion, this is, as a result, really is not the best idea. But this really depends on how you think, as we're going to talk a little more in a second, how ready you think Schaefer and Isaiah George are. Personally, just looking at the way they're playing so far in training camp, had a scrimmage day, Schaefer definitely looks like his skates are NHL ready. And as a result, I think the rest, he can figure it out. I think this is going to be an NHL defenseman. And as a result, there really is no need for at least a player like Grzelcyk. Whether or not they need a left-hand defenseman in general, well, that's also up for debate. But just looking at Grzelcyk's stats, this is a player who can provide a decent amount. And the one part of me that kind of thinks that maybe this would be a good idea is, keep in mind, last season, Grzelcyk put up 40 points for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Now, this is the most points he's scored in a season. Before that, his career high was 37 points. This is a player who does a lot right. He's a player who you can put on your second power play unit. I'll note the problem with this for the Islanders, again, is you likely want Schaefer getting some of those looks on the second power play unit. In addition, this is a player who just plays reliable defense. He's not a player who's really going to change the game in your favor, but him playing a relatively quiet game is what you want from a defenseman. And I'm gonna be honest, it is very surprising that he has not signed yet. Now, I have a feeling I know why. Looking at his profile, he's 5'10". A lot of these teams seem to really want to build these big, strong defensive cores. But for me, I'd rather have a guy who's consistently able to move the puck out of the zone and has solid defensive metrics. You know, I'm not an expert on Grzelcyk's game, but it's very notable that if you look through his plus minuses throughout his career, he's only had one season that he was a negative, and it was only a -6 on an absolutely abysmal Penguins team. So this is a really good defenseman. And I will say, while I don't think I want him right now, if anything goes wrong in Islanders training camp, say Adam Pelech misses some time, shows he's gonna miss some time this season, or something wrong happens with Alexander Romanov, or if Matthew Schaefer starts to show signs that he is not yet ready for the NHL. He hasn't shown those signs, but it's early. If he begins to look pretty poor in these preseason games, then I absolutely think you do sign Matt Grzelcyk. that would really change the situation. But looking at who the Islanders have now, it's really hard to make the argument that they should sign this player, because while this defense isn't exactly one of the top defenses in the NHL, in fact, I would probably put it in the lower half. It's the problem with the Islanders defense is the top four leaves a lot to be desired. Ideally, you do not have Tony DeAngelo in your top four. In addition, Ryan Pulock and Adam Pelech are no longer a top pair. I think there's solid second pair guys still in the NHL, but top pair, I don't think so. Alexander Romanov, I think, really has a lot of room to continue to grow into a really solid top four defenseman. But then, even then, he's more of a 3 or 4 guy, which is very valuable. And with the salary cap going up, this is going to be a very good contract. But he's not this top guy on your defense, which leaves this group needing a bit of more talent. But in terms of depth, I really don't see an issue with the Islanders' depth. Now, a lot of this is me banking on Matthew Schaefer being the 6th defenseman on this team. But I'll also note, if Matthew Schaefer does not make this team, Isaiah George also has a really solid chance of making the NHL. In fact, if it wasn't for the fact that Matthew Schaefer can't be sent down to the AHL, if it wasn't for the fact that Isaiah George can be sent down to the AHL, I think he would have a lot better chance at making the Islanders. If the Islanders had not drafted Matthew Schaefer, I think Isaiah George would almost be a shoo-in to be in the top 6 with how he played last season, and the depth really goes beyond there. When we were talking about how the Islanders' defense is not really the best defense in the league, that is certainly not because of depth, because even if they do not sign Grzelcyk, they still have Adam Boqvist, who I will note is a right-handed defenseman, but who has made very clear he can play on the left side. And we saw him a couple times last season playing on the left side. And the same is true with Ethan Bear, who is a right-handed defenseman, but who can play both sides. And I will note with both these players, while they are not absolute game changers, they are both veterans. In particular, if you're not familiar with Ethan Bear, he's actually played 250 games in the NHL. Now, he's always been a bottom tier 3rd pair guy, but for him to be your 8th defenseman, because looking at this list, assuming that these are your 6 starters, assuming Isaiah George goes down to the AHL, which again, Isaiah George can also play in the NHL, you really have in your starting roster at this point, you're going to have 8 defensemen, which really you don't, in fact, it kind of makes it more difficult when it comes to who is not going to make this team already, to the point where I don't think you need another defenseman. And while Grzelcyk certainly is a valuable player, unless there is an injury that changes the situation, I just don't think the Islanders need Grzelcyk, and I also don't think they need another defenseman. Would it be nice to have another guy who has a left-handed, shoots left-handed? Sure, but I don't think this is as important as people make it out to be. And when you look at the Islanders, they have plenty of defense. Keep in mind, when you have with your press box, you can only hold on to 3 players. So assuming there are no injuries, if you're holding on to Adam Boqvist and Ethan Bear, which I think you have to do, while it would be nice to have Ethan Bear sent down to your AHL team, I believe he does get claims on waivers. There are going to be a lot of teams looking for right-handed defensemen. Holding both those guys means a guy like Mark Gackhome or Kyle McLean is not going to make the NHL lineup and is going to be risked sending down on waivers. Now, if I had to guess between the two of those, I'd probably say you keep Kyle McLean because he is a center, even though I think Mark Gackhome does have more value. But there's a long time to go before that decision has to be made. Hate to say it, there's a high chance somebody gets injured before there, so the Islanders don't have to make that decision. But let me know what you think about a defenseman in Matt Grzelcyk. I will say, if the Islanders did sign this player, he's definitely somebody that you could ship off for a 3rd or 4th round pick, or even a little more, depending on how the season goes. But I think there's more value in having Schaefer or Isaiah George play a full season in the NHL. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below. That's going to do it for this episode of Islanders Digest. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. I'm your host, Patrick Nilan. Let's go, Islanders.